Somewhere off a rocky coastline, the ocean is behaving exactly as it always has. Seals gather near the surface, fish move through the kelp, and beneath them, one of the most effective predators on Earth is hunting. For more than 400 million years, sharks have perfected this moment. Six senses, a body built almost entirely for killing. Very little in the ocean forces them to change course. Then a pod of dolphins arrives. The shark does not circle, it does not test the newcomers. Within minutes, it is gone. That reaction has been documented again and again. Great white sharks abandon feeding grounds. Some do not return for months. The oldest predators in the modern ocean consistently give way to an animal that weighs only a fraction as much. Bottlenose dolphins have been observed killing sharks larger than themselves. Orcas, the largest members of the dolphin family, have emptied entire coastlines of great white sharks after a single encounter. The shark is older. In many cases, it is larger. It possesses senses few other animals can match. Yet when dolphins appear, something changes. Tonight, we're exploring one of the ocean's most unexpected rivalries, where intelligence, teamwork, and millions of years of evolution overturn everything we think we know about the apex predator. Long before forests spread across the continents, before the first creatures ventured onto land, an ancient design was already moving through the sea. Sharks had entered Earth's waters roughly 450 million years ago, enduring ages that erased countless other forms of life. They crossed the boundaries of mass extinctions, shifting oceans and changing climates, while remaining recognizable beneath each new chapter of the planet's history. Their story stretches so deeply into time that much of what feels ancient to us arrived long after sharks had already become masters of their world. The dolphins belong to a far younger chapter. Their distant ancestors once walked upon solid ground before returning to the sea roughly 50 million years ago. Modern dolphin lineages became established around 35 million years ago, entering waters where sharks had already refined their way of life across hundreds of millions of years. The newcomers did not arrive in an empty ocean waiting to be claimed. They entered a realm where one of evolution's oldest hunters had already shaped the rhythms of survival. Although both animals glide through the same blue world, almost every part of their biology follows a different plan. A shark is a fish whose skeleton is built from flexible cartilage rather than bone. Its body is streamlined for efficiency, conserving energy while remaining prepared for sudden bursts of speed. Most shark species spend their lives alone, relying on finely tuned instincts rather than companions. From the moment a young shark is born, it receives almost no parental guidance. Survival depends upon inherited behavior, individual experience, and the remarkable sensory equipment carried within a single body. The dolphin follows another path entirely. It is a warm-blooded mammal that must rise to the surface for every breath. Each calf spends many months developing before birth, and then remains close to its mother for years afterward, learning through observation, play, and constant interaction. Every stage of life unfolds within relationships. Instead of depending upon solitude, dolphins depend upon one another, building bonds that continue across seasons and often across generations. Even the way their bodies manage warmth shapes the worlds they experience. A dolphin maintains a stable internal temperature regardless of changing water conditions, allowing its nervous system to continue operating with remarkable consistency. Many sharks, by contrast, experience slower neurological activity as surrounding waters become colder. Reaction speed and sensory processing can gradually decline under those conditions, although several remarkable shark species have evolved specialized adaptations that allow parts of their bodies to remain warmer than the surrounding sea. Evolution has produced many variations, yet the underlying distinction between these two blueprints remains. Neither design is flawed. Each represents an extraordinary solution to the challenges of life beneath the waves. The shark embodies refinement through endurance, carrying a body shaped by immense spans of evolutionary time. The dolphin embodies flexibility, investing heavily in development, communication, and prolonged learning. One strategy favors inherited precision, the other favors adaptation through shared experience. Seen from this wider perspective, their encounters become more than meetings between predator and prey. They become moments where two philosophies of survival briefly occupy the same water. One lineage trusted that an individual could become so perfectly equipped that little else would be required. The other placed its investment into family, cooperation, and a brain capable of continually expanding what each generation could achieve. The currents surrounding them carry more than movement. They carry the consequences of these ancient choices, written into every breath, every motion, and every encounter beneath the surface. As these two blueprints continue drifting through the same ocean, the deeper patterns of physics, biology, thought, culture, and the nature of intelligence gradually begin to emerge, revealing how millions of years of separate evolution can shape the outcome of a single meeting. Every movement through the sea begins with information. Before a shark accelerates, turns, or changes depth, an extraordinary stream of signals is already flowing into its nervous system from every direction. Long before teeth or speed become part of the encounter, the shark has assembled one of the most refined sensory pictures found anywhere in the natural world, shaped across hundreds of millions of years until almost every surrounding disturbance carries meaning. The first layer arrives as scent. Water constantly transports dissolved chemical traces across immense distances, and the shark samples them with paired nostrils devoted entirely to smell rather than breathing. A single drop of blood dispersed through a volume of water comparable to an Olympic swimming pool can remain detectable under favorable conditions. More remarkable still is how direction emerges. If the faint chemical trail reaches one nostril even a fraction of a moment before the other, the shark compares that tiny difference and gradually turns toward the stronger source, following an invisible path woven through shifting currents. Beyond scent lies another system, extending almost the full length of the body. Beneath the skin runs the lateral line, a narrow canal filled with specialized sensory cells that register minute changes in pressure and water movement. Every swimming fish, every sweeping tail, every drifting body creates ripples that spread outward through the sea. Even in complete darkness, the shark can detect the movement of prey from roughly 300 feet, which is about 91 meters, without relying upon sight. Water itself becomes a messenger, carrying motion long before an object comes into view. The most unusual sense rests around the shark's snout, where clusters of tiny jelly-filled pores, known as the ampullae of Lorenzini, gather information that almost no other large predator can perceive. Every living animal produces faint electrical fields as nerves fire and muscles contract. The heartbeat of a fish resting beneath sand, hidden from sight and scarcely moving at all, still releases an electrical signature into the surrounding water. The shark can detect electrical fields, measuring as little as 5 billionths of a volt, revealing prey that appears completely absent to every ordinary sense. Vision contributes another layer. Behind the retina sits a reflective structure called the tapetum lucidum, acting much like a polished mirror that redirects unused light back through the light-sensitive cells of the eye. In dim conditions beneath the surface, where sunlight weakens with depth, this adaptation gathers every possible fragment of illumination, shapes that would disappear to many other animals remain visible, allowing the shark to continue hunting through the fading blue. Sound completes the picture. Low-frequency vibrations travel efficiently through seawater, carrying the uneven rhythm of struggling prey across impressive distances. A wounded fish produces patterns unlike those of healthy movement, and the shark's hearing is finely tuned to those deeper frequencies. Under suitable conditions, those sounds may draw a shark from more than 1 kilometer, which is about 0.62 miles, away, adding another stream of evidence to the growing picture forming inside its brain. None of these senses operates alone. Smell suggests direction, pressure reveals movement, electricity uncovers hidden life, vision confirms shape, hearing broadens awareness across greater distances. Together they merge into a unified perception, allowing the shark to interpret an environment that appears almost impossibly rich in detail. Yet beneath this remarkable achievement rests an important boundary. Every signal arrives from the outside. The shark waits for scent to drift, for vibrations to spread, for light to reflect, for sound to travel, and for electrical fields to reach its skin. Its senses receive the ocean with astonishing precision, but they never project outward to examine it. The surrounding water offers its countless messages, and the shark, refined through immense ages of evolution, listens with extraordinary skill. Darkness beneath the sea is rarely an absence for a dolphin. It is a canvas waiting to be revealed, not through light, but through waves of sound that spread outward with remarkable precision. Where many marine animals wait for the ocean to offer information, the dolphin begins each moment by asking the water to answer, filling the surrounding world with rapid streams of carefully shaped clicks that transform empty space into a living map. These clicks are produced within specialized structures inside the nasal passages rather than the throat. Before they leave the body, they pass through a remarkable organ known as the melon, a rounded mass of fatty tissue positioned within the forehead. Much as a finely crafted lens directs light into a focused beam, the melon shapes and concentrates sound into a narrow path, allowing the dolphin to aim each burst toward a chosen part of its surroundings with extraordinary control. The sound races through seawater at approximately 1,500 meters per second, striking rocks, schools of fish, drifting plants, and every other object resting in its path. This speed is roughly 4 times faster than sound travels through air, allowing echoes to return almost instantly. Those returning reflections carry tiny differences in timing, strength, and frequency. The dolphin's brain gathers every variation and assembles them into a detailed, three-dimensional acoustic picture that changes from one instant to the next as the animal continues moving through the water. The level of detail borders upon the astonishing. A dolphin can detect an object no larger than a table tennis ball from several meters away. It can distinguish a hollow object from a solid one even when both share the same outer shape. Different materials reflect sound in distinct ways, allowing the dolphin to recognize differences between wood, stone, metal, and living tissue through acoustic patterns alone. The returning echoes contain information not only about surfaces, but also about structures hidden beneath them. This ability reaches even further within living creatures. Bones, muscles, fat, and internal organs all reflect sound differently because each tissue possesses unique physical properties. As echoes return, they reveal variations inside another animal's body in much the same way that a medical ultrasound examination creates an image beneath the skin. During every encounter, the dolphin is not merely identifying another creature, it is perceiving layers that ordinary vision could never reveal, gathering information that remains concealed from almost every other hunter or defender in the sea. Recent research, published during June of the year 2025 by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, has suggested that this remarkable process involves more than rapid interpretation alone. Activity within the cerebellum appears to allow the dolphin's brain to predict the echoes it expects to receive before those echoes complete their journey back. Incoming information is compared against those expectations with astonishing speed, allowing perception to unfold almost seamlessly as sound continues flowing outward through the water. Even more remarkable is the endurance of this system. Dolphins have demonstrated the ability to maintain active echolocation for at least 15 consecutive days without measurable decline in performance. Producing and interpreting these constant streams of sound is not an occasional effort reserved for moments of danger or hunting. It forms part of their ordinary awareness, continuing as naturally as breathing between each visit to the surface. For a nearby shark, this creates a profound imbalance of knowledge. The dolphin continuously updates an acoustic picture that includes the shark's position, direction, speed, posture, and changing movement through the water. Every new echo refreshes that picture almost immediately, allowing the dolphin to follow even subtle changes before they become visible. The shark, despite all of its remarkable senses, possesses no comparable way of projecting information into the surrounding sea. One animal explores by sending sound into the world and reading its return. The other waits for the world to arrive on its own terms. The first decisive moment often passes without any visible movement at all. Nothing breaks the surface. No sudden turn disturbs the water. No obvious signal announces that two ancient lineages are drawing closer together. Yet long before either animal occupies the same stretch of open sea, one of them already possesses knowledge that the other does not. A large shark moving through the ocean leaves behind far more than a passing shape. Every sweep of its powerful tail displaces enormous volumes of water, creating shifting patterns of pressure that travel outward through the surrounding sea. A great white measuring roughly 15 feet, which is about 4.6 meters, pushes a substantial body through the water with each stroke, producing an acoustic signature that extends well beyond ordinary sight. Long before the shark expects company, that moving pattern has already become part of the dolphin's growing awareness. The pod does not depend upon chance to discover what approaches. Continuous echolocation transforms those distant disturbances into an unfolding picture that grows sharper with every returning echo. Direction becomes clear. Speed becomes measurable. Depth becomes apparent. Even subtle changes in posture and movement begin revealing themselves as the shark advances. While the shark continues gathering information only from signals reaching its own senses, the dolphins have already begun assembling a detailed account of the approaching visitor. The response begins gently, almost imperceptibly. Young calves drift toward the safer center of the group without haste. Mature dolphins alter their spacing by small degrees, each movement appearing ordinary when viewed alone. From a distance, nothing seems unusual. The pod continues swimming with the same graceful rhythm, offering no outward sign that anything has changed. Beneath that appearance, however, positions are gradually shifting into a pattern shaped by shared awareness rather than coincidence. This remarkable balance creates something resembling the finest form of natural counterintelligence. The hunter remains unaware that its presence has already been discovered. The intended target has identified the direction of approach, estimated the distance, and begun arranging its members accordingly, all while revealing almost nothing in return. Every ordinary motion conceals deliberate preparation, allowing the dolphins to preserve the greatest possible advantage until the final moments before contact. Field observations support this remarkable behavior. Marine researchers studying dolphin groups have documented occasions when sharks approached from directions outside the animal's visual attention. Even without turning their eyes toward the approaching predator, entire pods shifted orientation together, aligning themselves toward the unseen threat within moments. No visible cue connected those coordinated movements. The most consistent explanation rests in the continuous stream of acoustic information already flowing between the dolphins and their surroundings. Across roughly 450 million years of evolution, stealth has remained one of the shark's greatest strengths. Success often depends upon remaining unnoticed until the distance separating hunter and prey has nearly vanished. A brief burst of acceleration then closes the final gap before escape becomes possible. This pattern has shaped countless encounters throughout the history of marine life, rewarding patience, concealment, and perfect timing. Against a coordinated dolphin pod, that ancient sequence begins to unravel before it truly starts. The hidden approach has already been recognized. The closing distance has been measured. The positions of vulnerable calves have already changed. Adults have placed themselves where they can respond immediately, while continuing to present an appearance of ordinary travel. The surprise that once belonged to the shark has dissolved into information already shared throughout the group. By the time the shark reaches the place where instinct predicts confusion, isolation, and opportunity, it instead encounters a living formation prepared long before its arrival. Nothing dramatic announced the change. It emerged from countless echoes exchanged with the surrounding sea, each one carrying another fragment of knowledge until the entire pod possessed a common understanding of what was approaching. In waters where survival so often depends upon arriving unseen, the greatest advantage belongs to the animal that has already been watching from the beginning. No single dolphin carries the full strength of the pod. That strength exists only in the space between individuals, where constant communication transforms many separate lives into something larger than any one animal could become alone. The true advantage is not found in greater size or stronger muscles, but in the remarkable ability to think and move together while remaining perfectly synchronized beneath the surface. The shape of a pod changes with circumstance. Some consist of close family groups containing only 5 to 15 individuals whose relationships endure across many years. Others gather into temporary assemblies, numbering several hundred dolphins, when abundant food or seasonal migration brings many groups together. These larger formations eventually divide again, yet throughout every variation, the principle remains remarkably consistent. Each individual continues participating in a living network held together through continuous acoustic exchange. Every dolphin carries a distinctive signature whistle that functions much like an individual name. From early life onward, companions learn to recognize these unique vocal patterns with remarkable reliability, allowing each animal to identify specific pod members even when they cannot be seen. Across the surrounding water, whistles, clicks, and burst pulse sounds overlap continuously, creating an ever-changing conversation that maintains awareness of location, identity, and movement throughout the group. Communication is not reserved for unusual moments. It forms the steady foundation upon which every coordinated action depends. When danger enters that shared awareness, there is remarkably little hesitation. No commanding individual issues instructions. No dominant leader directs traffic. Vulnerable calves begin moving toward the center almost immediately, while healthy adults adjust their positions around the outside of the formation. Each dolphin responds to the same stream of information, producing an organized pattern without requiring centralized control. The result resembles countless birds changing direction together across the sky, except that this coordination unfolds within an unseen world shaped by sound rather than vision. To an outside observer, the response appears almost effortless. Individual movements remain smooth and natural, yet together they create the impression of a single, living body changing shape in one continuous motion. The pod no longer behaves as separate animals, making independent choices. Instead, every member contributes to the actions of a distributed system, whose awareness extends beyond the limits of any individual brain. Long-term research conducted in Shark Bay has documented this remarkable behavior during encounters with approaching sharks. In several observations, a shark advanced toward the side of a dolphin group from a direction where no dolphin appeared to be looking. Even so, the entire pod shifted orientation together within only a few moments, aligning themselves toward the approaching predator with striking consistency. Such coordinated movement cannot easily be explained through vision alone. The shared acoustic picture carried by the pod provides the most convincing explanation for how information spreads so rapidly through the group. For the shark, this creates a challenge unlike almost any other found in the ocean. Its hunting strategy developed across immense spans of evolutionary time by isolating vulnerable individuals from the protection of others. Success often depended upon separating one target from the group before launching a decisive attack. Against scattered prey, that strategy remains extraordinarily effective. A coordinated dolphin pod presents a completely different kind of opponent. The shark does not confront 12 separate animals when 12 dolphins occupy the same water. It confronts a unified defensive structure composed of 12 independent bodies sharing one continuously updated understanding of its position. Every movement by the shark is reflected almost immediately throughout the entire formation, allowing each dolphin to respond with knowledge extending beyond its own immediate surroundings. Isolation becomes nearly impossible because the formation constantly adjusts to preserve its integrity. Surprise loses much of its value because the approaching predator has already become part of the pod's shared awareness. Instead of discovering scattered individuals, the shark encounters a living architecture built from communication, memory, and cooperation, one that continually reshapes itself while remaining connected through an invisible web of sound stretching from one dolphin to the next. Strength beneath the sea is not always carried in teeth. Sometimes it is hidden within the shape of a single bone, refined across millions of years until an ordinary movement becomes a remarkably effective tool. Along the front of every dolphin extends the rostrum, a long, narrow structure that appears graceful from the outside, yet beneath the skin lies dense bone reinforced along its length. Rather than resembling a delicate nose, it is constructed more like the prow of a ship, designed to withstand repeated forces while remaining streamlined through the water. During ordinary swimming, the rostrum serves many purposes, helping the dolphin investigate objects, guide movement, and interact with companions. Under exceptional circumstances, however, it becomes something entirely different. Dolphins are capable of short bursts of speed, reaching between 20 and 25 miles per hour. At those velocities, the reinforced rostrum carries tremendous momentum. What appears slender suddenly functions as a powerful impact surface, capable of delivering substantial blunt force without relying upon sharp edges or crushing jaws. These strikes are far from random. Dolphins do not simply charge toward the nearest part of a shark. Instead, experienced adults typically approach from below and slightly behind, using the geometry of the encounter to reduce the chance of an immediate counterattack. As they accelerate upward and forward, the aim is directed toward regions where the shark's body offers the least protection and where internal damage can most effectively reduce the predator's ability to continue fighting. One important target lies along the gill region. A shark remains dependent upon a constant flow of water passing across delicate gill tissues to obtain oxygen. The supporting arches surrounding those openings are sturdy enough for ordinary swimming, yet they remain vulnerable to concentrated impacts delivered at speed. Damage to this area interferes with efficient breathing, and even partial disruption can greatly reduce the shark's endurance, mobility, and capacity to continue hunting. Another vulnerable region rests deeper within the body. In a great white shark, the liver may account for nearly 1/4 of total body weight. This enormous organ serves several essential purposes at once. It stores vast reserves of energy in the form of oils, supports metabolism, and provides much of the shark's natural buoyancy, allowing the animal to remain balanced within the water column. Serious injury to such a large and delicate structure can become life-threatening even when the outer body shows relatively little visible damage. The broader abdominal region also reflects an important difference between these two evolutionary designs. Sharks possess skeletons formed from cartilage rather than dense bone. Cartilage provides flexibility and reduces weight, advantages that contribute greatly to swimming efficiency. Yet, this same flexibility distributes force differently during powerful impacts. A concentrated blow may compress internal tissues without the rigid framework that bones often provide, increasing the possibility of injuries hidden beneath an outwardly intact surface. The effectiveness of the dolphin's strike therefore comes from several elements working together rather than from force alone. Reinforced anatomy, rapid acceleration, precise positioning, and detailed knowledge of vulnerable body regions combine into a remarkably efficient defensive tactic. In some documented encounters, internal injuries have proven severe enough to fatally wound a shark, even though the dolphin never received an opportunity to bite or tear flesh. Within a coordinated pod, these impacts rarely occur in isolation. One dolphin may strike and immediately move aside, while another approaches from a different direction. As the shark turns toward one attacker, another flank becomes exposed. Each adjustment creates a new opening, preventing the predator from concentrating on a single opponent for more than a brief instant. The pressure remains continuous because the attackers function as parts of the same coordinated system. Sharks that survive such encounters frequently carry lasting evidence beneath the skin. Internal trauma can reduce hunting efficiency for days afterward, limiting speed, endurance, and the ability to pursue prey successfully. The encounter leaves more than temporary disruption. It alters the balance of the predator itself, demonstrating that careful coordination and precise anatomy can reshape an outcome that raw power alone might never decide. Some of the greatest turning points in nature depend upon a weakness so unexpected that it remained almost unnoticed for immense stretches of evolutionary time. Sharks endured roughly 450 million years of changing oceans, surviving catastrophes that erased countless other lineages. Yet, hidden within that extraordinary success lies a neurological response, unlike almost anything else among large marine predators. If a shark is carefully turned onto its back, its powerful body gradually stops resisting and motion fades away. This condition is known as tonic immobility. Rather than being caused by injury or exhaustion, it is triggered by inversion itself. Once the body is rotated upside down, voluntary muscle control begins to shut down, breathing slows, as water passes less effectively across the gills. The eyes often roll backward, and the animal becomes largely unresponsive to activity around it. Depending upon the species and the circumstances, this state may continue for several seconds or even several minutes before normal movement gradually returns. The source of this response appears to rest within the vestibular system, the delicate organs inside the inner ear responsible for balance and orientation. Under ordinary conditions, these structures constantly inform the nervous system about the body's position in space. During inversion, however, those signals become profoundly disrupted. Instead of coordinating movement, the nervous system activates pathways that suppress motor activity, overriding the shark's ordinary control of its muscles. The result is not sleep, unconsciousness, or paralysis caused by injury. It is a naturally occurring neurological state produced by an unusual change in orientation. Researchers have demonstrated this phenomenon repeatedly under carefully controlled laboratory conditions. By gently supporting a shark and rotating it onto its back, scientists can often induce tonic immobility within only a few moments. Very little physical force is required. Once the response begins, the animal frequently remains almost completely still despite the absence of restraints. After being returned to its normal position, ordinary movement gradually resumes as the nervous system restores its familiar pattern of balance and control. Observations across many different species suggest that this vulnerability is remarkably widespread. Great white sharks, tiger sharks, bull sharks, lemon sharks, hammerhead sharks, nurse sharks, and numerous others have all displayed forms of tonic immobility under suitable conditions. Although the exact duration varies between species and individuals, the underlying neurological response appears throughout much of the shark family, hinting at an ancient characteristic carried across immense spans of evolutionary history. Why such a vulnerability exists remains uncertain. One possibility suggests that it originated as part of reproductive behavior, during which one shark temporarily restrains another while mating. Another proposes that it represents an evolutionary side effect with no particular advantage or disadvantage under ordinary circumstances. If a trait rarely reduced survival, natural selection would have little reason to eliminate it. Across hundreds of millions of years, no widespread predator consistently exploited this response, allowing it to remain embedded within the shark nervous system generation after generation. That long history gives the phenomenon an almost paradoxical quality. An adaptation does not always disappear simply because it appears vulnerable. It disappears only when survival repeatedly depends upon losing it. For countless ages, the ocean may never have presented conditions where tonic immobility imposed a meaningful cost upon shark populations. Then another lineage entered the story, carrying an entirely different collection of abilities. Within the dolphin family, especially among the largest members, behavior gradually emerged that could take advantage of this unusual neurological response. Whether discovered through repeated encounters or refined through generations of observation and social learning, the effect was the same. A hidden characteristic that had remained largely harmless across immense stretches of evolutionary time suddenly acquired profound ecological significance, revealing that even the oldest survivors can possess vulnerabilities waiting for the right opponent to uncover them. Among all living dolphins, one lineage carried the shared inheritance of intelligence, communication, and cooperation farther than any other. The orca became the largest member of the dolphin family, reaching lengths of about 26 feet, which is about 8 meters, and weighing as much as 8,000 pounds. Within that immense body rests a brain containing more cortical neurons than any other known animal, including human beings. Size alone does not explain what follows, but it provides a foundation upon which remarkable behavior has evolved. Unlike other predators of the sea, orcas stand apart as the only confirmed regular predators of fully grown great white sharks. Their encounters are not chaotic struggles, driven only by overwhelming strength. Careful observations gathered over recent years have revealed a sequence of actions so consistent that it resembles a practiced procedure refined through repeated experience rather than spontaneous opportunity. A particularly important record emerged from observations in the Gulf of California and was published during November of the year 2025 in the scientific journal Frontiers in Marine Science. Researchers documented pods composed of 5 female orcas working together against juvenile great white sharks. Each individual contributed to the encounter, yet no movement appeared wasted. Every position served a purpose within the unfolding sequence. The approach began with careful control of space rather than immediate attack. The orcas gradually directed the shark upward through coordinated movement, placing themselves above and below their target while limiting opportunities for escape. Instead of chasing wildly, they guided the shark into an increasingly restricted position where each member of the pod could anticipate the movements of the others with remarkable precision. At the decisive moment, one orca rotated the shark onto its back. The movement itself lasted only an instant, yet its consequences were profound. Almost immediately, tonic immobility took hold. The powerful predator that had spent hundreds of millions of years refining its hunting abilities became almost completely motionless. Voluntary movement faded, resistance largely disappeared. The shark remained alive, yet its nervous system had entered the vulnerable condition hidden within its ancient biology. What happened next revealed an extraordinary level of anatomical accuracy. Rather than biting repeatedly across the body, the orcas concentrated their effort on one carefully chosen location along the side of the shark. Through that opening, they removed the liver intact, separating the enormous organ from the surrounding tissues with remarkable efficiency. Once extracted, the liver passed between members of the pod and was consumed, while the remainder of the shark was largely left behind. This behavior carries remarkable implications. The liver is not visible from outside the shark. Locating it consistently requires an understanding of internal anatomy, precise bite placement, and careful timing before tonic immobility begins to fade. Every step must occur efficiently because the neurological condition eventually ends, restoring the shark's ability to move. The sequence therefore depends upon coordination, experience, and knowledge accumulated across previous encounters. Examinations of recovered carcasses strengthen this interpretation. Marine researchers noted that injuries were concentrated almost entirely around the extraction site. Large areas of the body showed remarkably little damage, indicating that the orcas avoided unnecessary bites that might complicate the procedure or increase the chance of provoking defensive movement. The evidence suggests deliberate restraint rather than uncontrolled violence, with each action focused upon a single, valuable objective. Viewed together, these observations transform the encounter into something far more intricate than a contest of physical power. The outcome emerges from communication between pod members, accurate knowledge of shark anatomy, careful exploitation of a neurological vulnerability, and disciplined coordination sustained throughout the event. The shark is defeated not because another predator possesses stronger jaws alone, but because the dolphin family combined intelligence, shared learning, and collective precision into a strategy capable of overcoming one of the oldest hunters the ocean has ever known. Some discoveries do not emerge from a single encounter, but from long records that patiently accumulate across seasons. Tiny electronic transmitters attached to the backs of great white sharks began revealing patterns that no observer standing on a boat could ever witness. Each transmission marked another position across the sea, another movement added to a growing map, until one repeated behavior became impossible to overlook. The Farallon Islands, lying off the coast near San Francisco, have long served as one of the most important seasonal gathering places for great white sharks in the northeastern Pacific Ocean. Dense colonies of elephant seals return there year after year, creating a remarkably dependable source of food. Adult sharks also return with impressive regularity, arriving during the same general season to take advantage of a concentrated supply of energy capable of sustaining them through long stretches of the year. Researchers following these sharks through satellite tagging expected movement to reflect changing prey, abundance, weather, and the ordinary rhythms of migration. Instead, another influence appeared. Whenever orcas entered the area and hunted, the response among the tagged great white sharks was immediate. Every monitored individual departed the region, swimming away from the islands and descending into deeper water rather than remaining near the feeding grounds that had attracted them in the first place. The departures were not brief adjustments, lasting a single afternoon or even several days. Weeks passed, then months. The electronic records continued tracing the sharks far from their customary destination, while the elephant seal colony remained behind, largely untouched by the predators that normally returned with remarkable consistency. The feeding season continued without many of the hunters that had depended upon it year after year. Dr. Salvador Jorgensen of California State University, who helped lead the tagging research, described a remarkably consistent pattern. Adult great white sharks completely evacuated their seasonal gathering areas after a single hunting event involving orcas, and they did not return for months afterward. The response appeared not as hesitation or temporary caution, but as a large-scale abandonment of habitat that had previously served as one of the most valuable feeding locations in their annual cycle. The cost of such a decision is considerable. Elephant seals represent an exceptionally rich source of calories, allowing sharks to replenish the enormous energy reserves required for migration, growth, and reproduction. Leaving that opportunity behind means accepting reduced access to one of the most dependable food resources available. From an ecological perspective, the sharks are choosing diminished feeding success over the possibility of sharing the same waters with members of the dolphin family. Such behavior stands apart from what biologists usually expect of apex predators. Animals occupying the highest levels of a food web seldom abandon productive hunting grounds because another predator has appeared. That pattern is more commonly associated with prey species adjusting their movements to avoid becoming food themselves. The satellite records, therefore, reveal something remarkable. In the presence of orcas, the behavioral decisions of great white sharks begin to resemble those normally expected from animals much lower in the food chain. Similar patterns have appeared elsewhere. Along the coast of South Africa, two well-known male orcas known as Port and Starboard repeatedly hunted great white sharks with extraordinary effectiveness. Following those encounters, local populations of great white sharks disappeared from areas they had occupied for many years. Their absence persisted not merely for weeks, but for years, reshaping the surrounding ecosystem in unexpected ways. Without their usual predator, bronze whaler sharks increased throughout the region, expanding into waters where great white sharks had once imposed strong ecological pressure. The movements of a few highly intelligent hunters therefore echoed outward across an entire marine community. What first appeared on satellite maps as a collection of departing tracks gradually revealed something much larger, an ancient predator willingly surrendering one of its richest feeding grounds because experience had taught that remaining carried a greater cost than leaving. The influence of dolphins does not belong only to the giants of their family. It also appears among the familiar bottlenose dolphins, animals far smaller than a great white shark, whose bodies may weigh only a fraction of the predator they sometimes confront. Yet size alone proves to be a poor guide for understanding what unfolds when these animals share the same waters. Even without overwhelming strength, bottlenose dolphins can reshape the daily decisions of sharks in ways that careful observation has made increasingly clear. One of the clearest windows into this relationship comes from Shark Bay in Western Australia, among the most intensively studied marine ecosystems on Earth. Decades of patient field research have allowed scientists to follow both dolphins and tiger sharks across the same coastal waters, revealing subtle changes that would disappear within shorter studies. The encounters rarely resemble dramatic battles. More often, they consist of small adjustments repeated over countless days until a larger pattern gradually emerges. When bottlenose dolphin pods enter areas where tiger sharks have been actively searching for food, the sharks frequently alter their behavior instead of maintaining their previous course. Rather than remaining in productive feeding locations, they begin changing both where and how they hunt. The shift appears consistently enough that researchers can detect it across many separate observations, even though direct physical conflict is often completely absent. Several specific changes have been documented. Tiger sharks spend less time near the surface while dolphins remain nearby. They increase their swimming speed, moving through the area with less lingering than before. They also shift their foraging locations sideways into neighboring waters where dolphin activity is lower, abandoning places that might otherwise provide dependable opportunities to locate prey. Their daily routines change as well, with feeding activity becoming more common during periods when bottlenose dolphins are less active. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of these observations is what does not happen. The sharks are not being chased away by repeated attacks. They are not responding to fresh injuries or overwhelming force. In many cases, the only meaningful difference is that dolphins have entered the same region. Their presence alone becomes enough to alter the shark's assessment of the surrounding environment, changing decisions before any confrontation begins. This makes the pattern especially striking because tiger sharks remain fully capable of hunting bottlenose dolphins. They are large enough to capture them, and documented predation continues to occur within Shark Bay. The physical danger has not disappeared. Dolphins have not become invulnerable. Instead, both species continue sharing an ancient relationship in which each possesses the capacity to threaten the other. Yet the balance of risk has shifted enough that sharks frequently conclude the potential cost of remaining outweighs the possible reward. Those decisions produce measurable ecological consequences. Sharks forced to spend more time moving between locations devote less time to efficient feeding. Longer searches mean prey is found less consistently, and daily food intake declines within areas where dolphin activity remains high. The effect is not dramatic in a single moment, but repeated across weeks and seasons, it becomes biologically significant. Over broader stretches of coastline, these behavioral adjustments create regions that function much like feeding exclusion zones. No physical barrier surrounds them. No dolphin stands guard over invisible boundaries. Instead, the The continued presence of coordinated dolphin pods generates enough behavioral pressure that sharks gradually reduce their use of those waters, redirecting their attention elsewhere. Ecologists often describe this phenomenon as a landscape of fear, where the expectation of danger reshapes movement before danger itself appears. Within Shark Bay, that landscape is written not through constant conflict, but through information, memory, and repeated experience. The dolphins need not drive every shark away. Their ordinary presence is often sufficient to redraw the invisible map that guides where one of the ocean's greatest predators chooses to hunt. Everything described so far, from the invisible mapping of nearby bodies to the effortless coordination of an entire pod, can be traced back to a single organ. Beneath the smooth curve of a dolphin's skull rests one of the most remarkable nervous systems ever produced by evolution. Every successful defense, every precisely timed movement, and every shared response begins as electrical activity flowing through an exceptionally specialized brain. Its physical size offers the first clue. The average bottlenose dolphin brain weighs about 1.5 kilograms, which is about 3.3 pounds. The average human brain weighs about 1.4 kilograms, which is about 3.1 pounds. By comparison, the brain of a great white shark weighs only a few ounces, despite the shark's far larger body. Size alone, however, reveals only part of the story. A larger animal naturally requires a larger nervous system simply to control muscles and process sensation. Scientists therefore rely on another measure known as the encephalization quotient. This term describes the ratio between an animal's actual brain size and the brain size expected for an animal of the same body mass. Rather than measuring raw weight, it estimates how much additional biological investment evolution has placed into cognition beyond the minimum needed to operate the body. On this scale, humans occupy the highest position with an encephalization quotient of about 7.5. Bottlenose dolphins consistently rank immediately behind, with values between 4.1 and 4.5. Most shark species remain well below 1. Their brains are entirely capable of guiding extraordinarily successful hunting behavior, yet they contain comparatively little additional capacity devoted to flexible reasoning, social complexity, or extensive learning beyond what their ecological strategy requires. Looking more closely reveals an even greater contrast. The dolphin's cerebral cortex contains an extraordinary number of folds and convolutions. Every fold increases the amount of cortical surface that can fit inside the skull, allowing many more neurons to occupy the same volume. This expanded surface creates additional capacity for processing information, integrating sensory input, remembering experiences, and coordinating behavior across many different situations. The brain has not simply become larger, it has become architecturally more intricate. Among the specialized cells embedded within this folded cortex are spindle neurons, also known as von Economo neurons. These unusually large nerve cells were once believed to exist only in humans and the great apes. In people, they are associated with rapid social judgment, empathy, emotional awareness, and the ability to infer the intentions of others. Their confirmed presence in dolphins suggests that evolution, working along an entirely different pathway, arrived at comparable neural tools for navigating complex social lives beneath the sea. One region of the dolphin brain illustrates this specialization with remarkable clarity. The areas devoted to processing returning echoes are proportionally about 10 times larger than the equivalent auditory processing regions in the human brain. Sound does not merely supplement the dolphin's understanding of its surroundings. It forms the foundation upon which nearly every moment of awareness is built. Millions of years of dependence upon echolocation gradually reshaped the brain itself, expanding the structures responsible for interpreting an endless stream of acoustic information. The opposite pattern appears in regions dedicated primarily to vision. Compared with the human brain, those areas occupy only about 1/10 as much proportional space. Evolution did not attempt to maximize every sense equally. Instead, it shifted precious neural resources away from visual processing and invested them in an acoustic world of astonishing precision. The result is not simply an intelligent marine mammal. It is a mind whose architecture reflects the demands of life in water, where information carried by sound has become the foundation of perception, cooperation, and survival. An individual mind can solve a problem once. A community of minds can solve it again and again, preserving the solution long after the original thinker has disappeared. This distinction marks one of the deepest differences between dolphins and most other marine predators. Intelligence becomes far more powerful when it can outlive the individual that first acquired it. Biologists describe this process as cultural transmission. Rather than passing information through genetic inheritance alone, knowledge spreads through observation, imitation, repeated practice, and direct social learning. Behaviors discovered by one generation become available to the next without waiting for evolution to reshape the body. Each lifetime contributes to a growing collection of shared experience that extends beyond any single animal. Among the clearest demonstrations appears in Shark Bay, where female bottlenose dolphins have developed an unusual method of feeding along the seafloor. Before searching among rocks and sediment, they place marine sponges over their rostrums. The sponge acts as protective padding, shielding the sensitive snout from sharp surfaces, hidden stings, and abrasion while probing for concealed prey. Young daughters spend years observing their mothers perform this behavior before gradually mastering it themselves. The practice passes almost entirely through the female family line, demonstrating that the technique is learned rather than inherited through genetics. Their voices reveal another layer of shared learning. Different dolphin communities develop distinctive combinations of clicks and whistles that function as regional dialects. Neighboring pods, occupying overlapping waters, may exchange portions of these vocal patterns through repeated contact, while groups separated across greater distances gradually shape increasingly unique forms of communication. These differences arise through learning across generations, rather than through inherited biological differences, allowing each community to maintain an acoustic identity shaped by its own history. The same pattern appears during hunting. Certain dolphin populations cooperate to herd schools of fish toward shallow beaches, timing their movements with remarkable precision before rushing ashore just far enough to capture stranded prey. Nearby pods living under similar environmental conditions may never display the behavior at all. The physical opportunity exists for both groups, yet only the community that inherited the learned strategy continues to practice it. Knowledge, not anatomy, separates them. The same principle extends naturally to encounters with sharks. A young dolphin does not begin life possessing complete understanding of every potential danger. Instead, it grows within a society where experienced adults repeatedly demonstrate how to recognize the outline, movement, and posture of approaching predators. Different shark species present different levels of danger, and those distinctions become familiar through countless observations. Calves learn how adults reposition themselves within the pod, how coordinated movement protects vulnerable companions, and where a defensive strike carries the greatest effect if conflict cannot be avoided. The consequence reaches far beyond any single encounter. Every successful escape, every effective defensive maneuver, and every newly discovered tactic becomes part of a living archive carried within the community itself. Across potentially thousands of dolphin generations, useful behaviors accumulate instead of disappearing. Successful ideas are preserved through teaching, while ineffective responses gradually vanish because they are no longer demonstrated. The result resembles a library that expands with every generation while remaining constantly available to the young. A young shark enters the ocean with instincts refined through immense spans of evolutionary time, and those instincts have served its lineage extraordinarily well. Yet its behavioral foundation remains largely the same, beginning offered to generations before it. A young dolphin arrives in the sea with inherited instincts as well, but it also enters a society already filled with remembered experience. Evolution shaped the brain, while culture continues shaping what that brain knows, allowing each new generation to begin not at the starting line, but at the edge of discoveries made long before its own first breath. Some contests are shaped by strength, while others are shaped by memory. By this point, the distinction has gradually emerged through every layer of the story. One lineage carries experience forward through teaching, while the other depends primarily upon instincts refined across immense stretches of evolutionary time. The difference is subtle in any single encounter, yet profound across millions of years. For sharks, behavior is guided largely by inherited neural programs. These responses are remarkably efficient because they were molded by natural selection under conditions repeated across countless generations. When prey accelerates, turns, or struggles, the shark reacts with extraordinary speed and consistency. Such reliability has helped sharks persist through ancient oceans that changed repeatedly around them. The same reliability, however, also limits how readily those behaviors can be reshaped through individual experience. Careful research has shown that sharks are capable of learning, though within comparatively narrow boundaries. They can associate a recurring signal with food, remember productive feeding locations, and alter simple routines after repeated exposure to predictable events. These forms of learning are genuine and scientifically well established. Yet they remain far less flexible than the learning displayed by highly social mammals, whose behavior can be reorganized through observation, cooperation, imitation, and prolonged experience. Another distinction appears in the absence of convincing evidence for play. Among many intelligent mammals, play provides opportunities to experiment with movement, social interaction, and problem-solving without immediate survival consequences. Young individuals test possibilities, discover unexpected outcomes, and gradually expand their behavioral repertoire before those skills become essential in adulthood. Sharks display no comparable pattern that suggests open-ended experimentation for its own sake. Their development emphasizes dependable execution rather than exploratory variation. Observation alone also appears to offer sharks relatively little opportunity for behavioral refinement. No convincing evidence demonstrates that one shark can watch another succeed or fail during a hunting attempt, analyze the outcome, and then deliberately modify its own strategy in response. Each individual relies primarily upon its own inherited behavioral framework, together with the limited learning gained through direct personal experience. Information does not accumulate within the population through widespread social exchange. This difference becomes even more significant across generations. Imagine that a particular shark somehow discovered a slightly more effective approach for confronting dolphins. That improvement would remain almost entirely confined to the individual that made the discovery. When that shark eventually died, the knowledge would disappear with it. Its offspring would begin life, guided by essentially the same inherited behavioral foundation that directed generations before them, rather than benefiting from an expanding archive of learned experience. Dolphins occupy the opposite side of this equation. Their defensive behaviors are continually reinforced through observation, communication, and repeated interaction within the pod. Each successful response enriches the collective understanding available to younger members. Across roughly 35 million years since the ancestors of modern dolphins returned fully to marine life, this process has unfolded generation after generation. Every encounter contributed opportunities to recognize recurring shark behaviors, identify predictable attack patterns, and refine increasingly effective responses. Meanwhile, the essential hunting strategies employed by sharks have remained strikingly consistent because those strategies have served them extraordinarily well against the overwhelming majority of marine prey. Their evolutionary script is ancient, dependable, and impressively successful. Yet when that script is repeatedly encountered by an opponent capable of remembering, teaching, and improving upon previous experience, predictability gradually becomes a disadvantage. Each new generation of dolphins begins with access to lessons accumulated long before its own birth, while each new generation of sharks relies once more upon instincts that have changed only slowly across evolutionary time. In that contrast, the balance between these remarkable animals becomes easier to understand, not because one lineage failed, but because one acquired the rare ability to let knowledge grow faster than biology itself. Some histories are preserved in stone, while others remain etched into living skin. Along the coast of Shark Bay, generations of dolphins have carried an enduring archive across their own bodies. Every healed wound, every pale crescent, and every interrupted pattern of gray skin records an encounter that ended not with death, but with survival. Over many decades, these marks have become one of the most valuable sources of evidence for understanding how dolphins and sharks truly coexist. The Shark Bay Dolphin Study stands among the longest continuously maintained wildlife monitoring projects in marine biology. Researchers have photographed, identified, and followed individual dolphins across decades, recognizing each animal through distinctive markings on the dorsal fin, together with the unique arrangement of scars covering the body. Because scar tissue remains visible for life, a photograph taken many years apart can reveal not only the identity of an individual, but also the lasting record of injuries accumulated through its lifetime. Certain wounds possess unmistakable characteristics. Tiger shark bites often leave broad crescent-shaped scars whose spacing and curvature match the geometry of the shark's jaws. Even photographs taken above the water can preserve enough detail for researchers to distinguish these healed injuries from abrasions, encounters with other dolphins, or accidental contact with the environment. Each recognizable scar represents an attack that failed to become a successful kill. When these records are examined across the resident population, a striking pattern emerges. More than 70% of the dolphins documented in Shark Bay carry at least one healed shark bite scar. Most individuals living in this ecosystem have survived a direct encounter with one of their principal predators. Rather than describing an occasional or exceptional event, the evidence reveals that such encounters form a recurring part of everyday life beneath the surface. Researchers estimate that approximately 10% of the resident dolphin population experiences a shark attack during a typical year. This means the defensive behaviors described throughout this story are not reserved for unusual circumstances. They are practiced repeatedly across entire lifetimes, shaped by continual exposure to genuine danger rather than isolated moments of conflict. Every generation grows within an environment where vigilance and cooperation remain constant companions. The scars also reveal changes in behavior that develop through accumulated experience. Dolphins carrying numerous healed injuries are more likely to travel in closely coordinated groups than individuals bearing fewer scars. Each successful escape appears to reinforce the survival value of maintaining tight pod cohesion. Lessons learned through direct experience become reflected not only in memory, but also in daily patterns of movement and social organization. Another trend appears in habitat choice. Dolphins with extensive scar tissue spend less time within shallow, warm coastal waters where tiger sharks hunt most effectively. Instead, they adjust their movements toward areas presenting lower risk. The ocean itself gradually becomes organized according to remembered danger, with previous encounters influencing where experienced individuals choose to travel long afterward. Young calves display noticeably fewer shark scars than mature adults, yet this difference does not arise because predators overlook smaller dolphins. Adult members of the pod consistently position themselves between approaching sharks and the youngest animals. The bodies of experienced dolphins therefore absorb much of the physical evidence of these confrontations, reflecting years spent protecting more vulnerable companions. Viewed together, these observations transform the meaning of the scar records. More than 70% of the population bears evidence of surviving shark attacks, not because sharks consistently prevail, but because dolphin defenses repeatedly convert encounters that might otherwise prove fatal into survivable events. The same long-term studies reveal another complementary pattern. Where shark populations become especially dense, dolphin pods tend to grow larger and more cohesive. Where dolphin populations remain consistently abundant, shark foraging efficiency declines as hunting becomes more difficult. Together, these patterns describe neither victory nor defeat, but a long enduring equilibrium shaped by adaptation on one side and persistence on the other, written year after year into the living bodies that continue swimming through the same remarkable sea. Among the many patterns revealed by decades of observation, one stands apart because it appears to reverse an expectation that seems almost universal in nature. When danger suddenly erupts, many animals survive by fleeing. Dolphins often respond in a different way. When a member of the pod is struck by a shark, the surrounding animals frequently converge upon the source of danger rather than retreating from it. Field observations have documented this response repeatedly. Within moments of an attack, healthy adult dolphins turn toward the shark instead of swimming away. Their movements become coordinated almost immediately as individuals accelerate from different positions, directing rapid approaches at the predator. These charges are not random bursts of panic. They are organized movements that force the shark to divide its attention among several fast-moving opponents instead of concentrating upon the wounded animal. At the same time, another effort unfolds around the injured dolphin. If the wounded individual struggles to maintain its position within the water column, companions press upward from beneath its body, supporting it against sinking. This behavior has been recorded continuing for hours after severe injuries. One dolphin may briefly assume the burden before another moves into position, allowing the effort to continue without exhausting a single individual. Survival becomes a shared responsibility distributed across the entire pod. Adults also place themselves directly between the shark and the injured companion. Every such movement carries genuine danger. Charging toward an active great white shark is not a gesture without consequence. The shark remains capable of inflicting serious injury upon any dolphin that comes within reach. Yet the defensive formation repeatedly places healthy adults where the greatest risk exists, creating a living barrier that increases the wounded animal's opportunity to recover or escape. The remarkable consistency of this behavior reflects more than simple instinct alone. Earlier, the architecture of the dolphin brain revealed the presence of spindle neurons, specialized nerve cells associated in humans with rapid social judgment, emotional awareness, and sensitivity to the condition of others. Their confirmed presence in dolphins suggests that the distress of another pod member is processed through neural systems capable of supporting highly sophisticated social responses. Although scientists remain appropriately cautious about attributing human emotions directly to other animals, the neurological foundation for something resembling deep social concern is clearly present. The contrast with sharks arises not because one lineage succeeded while the other failed, but because each followed an entirely different evolutionary path. Sharks evolved primarily as solitary hunters. Their biology does not revolve around maintaining lifelong social bonds or defending injured companions through coordinated action. There is no comparable behavioral framework requiring individuals to surround a wounded member, divide protective duties, or collectively absorb the danger presented by an attacking predator. Such responses simply fall outside the ecological strategy that shaped their evolution. This difference transforms survival itself. A dolphin does not rely solely upon its own strength, speed, or awareness. It carries with it the protective capacity of the pod. Every nearby companion increases the likelihood that an attack will be interrupted before becoming fatal. The group's coordinated defense repeatedly changes outcomes that might otherwise end in loss. An injured dolphin, surrounded by companions, therefore possesses a far greater chance of surviving than an equally injured dolphin isolated from its pod. Every supporting body, every defensive charge, and every moment spent holding the wounded animal near the surface contributes to that advantage. A shark wounded during an encounter receives no equivalent assistance. Its survival depends entirely upon its own remaining strength. In the dolphin world, resilience belongs not only to the individual, but to the community that refuses to leave one of its own behind. Seen from a greater distance, the encounters between dolphins and sharks begin to resemble something larger than contests of strength or speed. Each defensive movement, each coordinated response, and each successful escape traces back to a deeper advantage that cannot be measured in muscle or teeth alone. Beneath every action lies the movement of information, gathered, interpreted, shared, remembered, and refined across time. The first advantage begins with perception itself. A dolphin does not simply wait for the surrounding ocean to reveal its secrets. It actively sends sound outward, then studies the returning echoes with astonishing precision. Every reflection carries details about shape, movement, distance, and direction. Long before danger reaches visual range, the dolphin has already assembled an acoustic portrait of what approaches. The shark possesses senses of extraordinary sensitivity, capable of detecting faint electrical fields, subtle vibrations, and traces carried through the water, yet those senses remain fundamentally passive. They receive what the environment provides, while the dolphin continuously creates new opportunities to gather knowledge. That information does not remain within a single mind. It becomes part of the living fabric of the pod. Constant vocal communication allows individuals to maintain awareness of one another while exchanging signals that preserve group cohesion. The result is not merely a collection of separate observations, but a shared understanding of the surrounding world. When one dolphin detects an approaching shark through echolocation, The resulting awareness spreads through the pod with remarkable speed. Calves, adults, and experienced individuals respond as parts of one coordinated system because each animal benefits from information extending beyond its own immediate senses. Knowledge also persists across time in a way that transforms each generation. Behaviors discovered through experience do not disappear when an individual dies. Through cultural transmission, young dolphins learn by watching older companions, practicing successful techniques, and gradually absorbing patterns refined across countless lives. Defensive responses, recognition of dangerous species, coordinated movement, and precise timing become inherited through teaching rather than through changes in genetic inheritance alone. The discoveries of one generation become the starting point for the next, allowing accumulated experience to grow instead of beginning anew. The shark follows a profoundly different path. Every individual enters the sea, equipped with sensory systems shaped by immense evolutionary history and governed largely by inherited behavioral patterns. Experience can influence certain simple associations, yet learned discoveries remain largely confined to the individual that acquires them. A shark cannot communicate detailed hunting knowledge to another shark, nor can it transfer successful strategies directly to its offspring. Information arrives through personal experience and generally leaves with the same individual. This distinction creates an increasingly unequal contest whenever the two lineages meet. Dolphins combine observations from many minds into a common resource, while sharks depend upon the perceptions of only one. The pod behaves as a network whose strength grows with every participating member. The solitary hunter remains limited to the information available through its own senses during that single encounter. Across the broader history of life, this pattern appears again and again. Whenever highly social intelligence develops reliable ways to gather, preserve, and distribute knowledge, it begins to reshape relationships that were once governed primarily by physical capability. Superior claws, sharper teeth, or more sensitive organs continue to matter, yet they gradually surrender part of their advantage to systems capable of collective learning. The enduring story beneath every meeting between dolphins and sharks is therefore not simply one of predator and defender. It is the story of information itself becoming an evolutionary force, flowing through living communities instead of isolated individuals, accumulating with each generation until knowledge becomes as powerful a survival tool as any physical adaptation carried through the sea. There are moments in the history of life when a newcomer arrives in a world whose rules seem already complete. The seas that welcomed the earliest dolphin ancestors were such a place. For well over 400 million years, sharks had occupied the role of dominant large predators. Countless marine lineages had evolved beneath that enduring presence, shaping their movements, bodies, and behaviors around the constant possibility of encountering a hunter perfected through immense stretches of evolutionary time. This was not an empty ocean waiting for innovation. It was an environment whose rhythms had long been influenced by shark predation. Large fishes, marine reptiles of earlier ages, and eventually marine mammals all entered waters where sharks already possessed extraordinary sensory systems and efficient hunting strategies. Any animal reaching substantial size did so within an ecological landscape defined in part by the influence of sharks. Survival depended upon fitting into that existing order rather than rewriting it. The ancestors of modern dolphins entered this ancient stage without obvious advantages. They were comparatively small marine mammals, vulnerable to attack and surrounded by predators that had been refining successful behaviors since long before mammals became significant inhabitants of the sea. Judged only by physical strength, their prospects appeared modest. Their teeth were capable, yet hardly unmatched. Their bodies were swift, though not uniquely so. Nothing in those early forms suggested they would eventually alter the behavior of some of the ocean's most formidable hunters. Yet evolution sometimes advances through changes that reinforce one another instead of developing in isolation. Evidence from the fossil record indicates that the broader lineage of early whales experienced a major expansion in brain size approximately 35 million years ago. Later, around 27 million years ago, the ancestors of modern dolphins, porpoises, and belugas underwent another substantial increase in cognitive investment. These changes did not occur as isolated curiosities. They unfolded alongside increasingly sophisticated social organization and increasingly rich acoustic communication. Whether expanding intelligence encouraged more elaborate societies, or increasingly demanding social lives favored larger and more capable brains, remains difficult to separate. The two developments appear to have advanced together, each strengthening the other across many generations. A larger brain supported more flexible cooperation, while cooperative living rewarded individuals able to interpret companions, remember relationships, and process growing streams of acoustic information. Gradually, the pod itself became an adaptive force, shaping the future of every generation born within it. As these capacities accumulated, dolphins acquired abilities unlike those of any earlier marine predator. Echolocation extended perception beyond ordinary vision. Communication allowed discoveries to spread through entire groups instead of remaining trapped within solitary experience. Cultural learning preserved successful responses across generations. Cooperative defense transformed vulnerable individuals into members of resilient communities. Each innovation alone offered an advantage, yet together they created something greater than the sum of its parts. Across geological time, this transformation unfolded with remarkable speed. In approximately 35 million years, a lineage that began as relatively vulnerable marine mammals developed into one capable of influencing the movements and decisions of great white sharks. On the scale of Earth's history, where major evolutionary transitions often require vastly longer intervals, this represents an unusually swift rise in ecological influence. The significance lies not in replacing sharks as universal rulers of the sea, but in creating a relationship that even ancient apex predators could no longer ignore. The ocean that had once revolved almost entirely around shark dominance gradually gained another organizing influence. Sharks remained extraordinary hunters, carrying adaptations refined through incomprehensible spans of time. Dolphins introduced a different path to success, one built upon intelligence, cooperation, memory, and shared knowledge. The rules were not discarded, yet they were undeniably rewritten, demonstrating that the history of life is shaped not only by the oldest survivors, but also by those capable of discovering entirely new ways to endure. There is an idea that lingers at the edge of evolutionary biology, one that carries an unexpected symmetry. The long struggle between sharks and dolphins may not simply explain how one animal learned to withstand another. It may also explain how one of the most remarkable minds in the ocean came to exist. Across millions of years, the hunter that shaped so much of marine life may also have shaped the intelligence of the creature that now regularly alters its behavior. The proposal rests upon a well-established principle of evolution. Predators and prey do not evolve independently. Each becomes part of the environment experienced by the other. Every improvement in one lineage changes the conditions faced by the other, creating an ongoing exchange of adaptation that can continue across immense spans of geological time. Researchers studying predator and prey relationships recognize this process as one of the most powerful engines of biological change. Applied to dolphins, the pattern becomes strikingly coherent. Individuals that maintained stronger social bonds were less likely to face a shark alone. Those that communicated danger more effectively allowed companions to respond before an attack developed. Better coordinated pods protected calves more successfully and recovered more often from dangerous encounters. Every improvement, however small, translated into a greater chance of surviving long enough to reproduce. Survival carried those advantages into the following generation. Young dolphins inherited bodies shaped by natural selection, yet they also entered communities where successful behaviors were already being practiced. As communication became increasingly sophisticated, the demands placed upon the brain expanded as well. Recognizing companions, interpreting complex vocal signals, remembering relationships, coordinating movement, and responding collectively to danger all required growing neurological capacity. Larger and more capable brains supported richer social lives, while richer social lives rewarded individuals possessing greater cognitive flexibility. The cycle reinforced itself repeatedly across millions of years. Throughout that immense span of time, shark predation remained one of the most persistent, selective pressures acting upon dolphin ancestors. Individuals that detected approaching predators earlier survived more frequently. Those capable of interpreting finer acoustic details gained valuable moments to organize an effective response. Even slight improvements in echolocation could separate survival from failure. Over countless generations, natural selection would steadily favor increasingly refined acoustic perception because the reward for better information was extraordinarily high. This perspective helps explain the remarkable investment visible within the dolphin brain. Regions devoted to producing echolocation signals and interpreting returning echoes occupy an unusually large proportion of the nervous system. Such biological investment rarely develops without sustained evolutionary benefit. Neural tissue is metabolically expensive, demanding substantial energy throughout an animal's life. Evolution tends to preserve such costly structures only when the advantages they provide consistently outweigh those costs. Predator detection represents one of the strongest possible incentives for maintaining such an elaborate sensory system. The consequences extended beyond perception alone. Once communication, cooperation, and shared learning became intertwined with survival, intelligence itself became increasingly valuable. Every generation inherited not only anatomical refinements, but also an expanding body of collective experience. The pressure imposed by sharks continually rewarded dolphins able to process information more efficiently, coordinate more effectively, and respond with greater flexibility than those before them. If this interpretation reflects the deeper history of their relationship, it reveals an extraordinary irony. The shark did not intentionally create its future rival, nor did the dolphin consciously plan its own ascent. Instead, millions of years of relentless selection gradually transformed repeated attempts at predation into a force that favored larger brains, richer communication, stronger societies, and increasingly sophisticated cooperation. The result is one of evolution's most remarkable reversals. A predator that spent hundreds of millions of years refining the art of pursuit may also have supplied the enduring pressure that encouraged the rise of the very intelligence capable of anticipating, resisting, and ultimately reshaping its influence across the living ocean. At the farthest edge of the story stands an animal that gathers together every advantage explored along the way. If the bottlenose dolphin reveals what intelligence, communication, and cooperation can accomplish against an ancient predator, the orca reveals what happens when those same qualities are joined to immense physical power. The result is not a different strategy, but the fullest expression of one that has been unfolding across millions of years. An adult male orca may possess a brain weighing as much as 6.2 kilograms, far exceeding the mass of a human brain. More remarkable still, studies indicate that the orca brain contains more cortical neurons than that of any other known animal, including humans. These neurons support the complex processing required for communication, memory, social relationships, and flexible behavior. Physical size alone never determines intelligence, yet in the orca, extraordinary brain development accompanies one of the richest social lives known in the natural world. Across the oceans, different orca populations display traditions that remain remarkably distinct despite belonging to the same species. Neighboring groups may inhabit similar waters while pursuing entirely different prey, using different hunting methods, and communicating through vocal dialects that other groups do not share. These differences are not explained by anatomy or genetic separation. They arise because knowledge is transmitted culturally, with each community preserving its own learned behaviors across generations. Among the most remarkable examples is the population known to researchers as the Moctezuma pod in the Gulf of California. For many years, scientists have documented this group's unusual specialization. Rather than feeding broadly upon whatever large prey becomes available, these orcas focus overwhelmingly upon sharks, rays, and chimeras, the cartilaginous fishes collectively known as elasmobranchs. Such an exceptionally narrow dietary preference is almost without parallel among large marine predators, demonstrating that culture can shape feeding behavior as profoundly as physical adaptation. Within that specialization lies another layer of accumulated knowledge. The preferred target is not the entire shark, but its liver, an organ exceptionally rich in squalene, a highly calorie-rich hydrocarbon oil. Because this single organ stores enormous energy reserves, consuming it provides an unusually rewarding meal, while requiring far less effort than eating the entire carcass. The repeated selection of this organ reflects learned nutritional knowledge rather than simple instinct. The orcas consistently choose the most valuable portion with remarkable precision, leaving much of the remaining body behind. Perhaps even more revealing is the evidence that these sophisticated techniques are deliberately taught. Researchers observed a mother orca demonstrating the inversion maneuver that induces tonic immobility in a subdued shark while her daughter watched nearby. Afterward, the younger animal repeatedly practiced the same movement under the mother's supervision. This was more than imitation occurring by chance. It represented the intentional transfer of a demanding physical skill from one generation to the next, ensuring that knowledge accumulated over many years would continue beyond the experience of a single individual. The response of great white sharks provides another glimpse into how enduring this relationship has become. Wherever orcas appear, great white sharks often abandon productive feeding grounds with remarkable speed, remaining absent for extended periods after only a single hunting event. Such widespread and consistent avoidance suggests that encounters between sharks and orcas have occurred often enough across evolutionary history for strong avoidance tendencies to become deeply established within shark behavior. Individual experience certainly reinforces those responses, yet the remarkable consistency implies an influence extending beyond isolated encounters. Viewed together, The orca becomes the culmination of a long evolutionary pathway. Intelligence is amplified by culture. Culture is strengthened through teaching. Teaching preserves successful knowledge, and immense physical strength gives every learned behavior greater reach. In the orca, the strategies first hinted at by smaller dolphins achieve their fullest expression, revealing how the patient accumulation of shared knowledge can ultimately reshape even the behavior of predators whose lineage once seemed beyond challenge. The rhythm that has endured across millions of years is no longer being shaped by evolution alone. A new force has entered the relationship, acting with a speed unlike anything either dolphins or sharks have encountered before. For more than 35 million years, their contest unfolded gradually, each generation responding to pressures carried forward from the last. Within only a few human lifetimes, that ancient balance has begun to shift in ways the natural world has never experienced. Research published in the journal Nature reveals that global shark populations have declined by approximately 71% since the year 1970. Among the planet's major groups of vertebrate animals, no comparable worldwide collapse has been documented during recorded history. Species that once defined entire marine landscapes have become uncommon, and in many places have disappeared altogether, leaving stretches of ocean that no longer resemble the environments in which countless marine communities evolved. The oceanic white-tip shark offers one of the clearest examples. Once regarded as among the most abundant large animals inhabiting the open ocean, its population was measured in the tens of millions across vast tropical waters. Today, the species has become functionally absent throughout much of its former range. In several regions, scientific surveys estimate declines exceeding 95%. Waters that once carried these sharks almost continuously can now remain without a single encounter for extended periods. The causes are not mysterious. Commercial fishing removes enormous numbers of sharks directly, while countless others become accidental victims through bycatch, the capture of animals in fishing equipment intended for different species. Added to these pressures is the international trade in shark fins, which has accelerated losses across many populations. Researchers estimate that human activity kills roughly 100 million sharks every year, a level of mortality with no historical equivalent during the long partnership between sharks and dolphins. Dolphins have hardly escaped human influence. Fishing gear can entangle them. Expanding coastal development alters important habitat, and the growing presence of underwater noise interferes with communication that has guided their societies for countless generations. Yet on a global scale, dolphin populations have not experienced a collapse comparable to that affecting sharks. The pressures upon both groups are real, but they are not equal in magnitude, and that difference is gradually reshaping the living structure of the oceans. An unfamiliar condition is beginning to emerge, one in which dolphins remain comparatively widespread while sharks continue to diminish. Such an arrangement has no known precedent since dolphins first evolved. Every generation of dolphins inherited an ocean where sharks formed a persistent ecological presence, influencing movement, behavior, and survival. The possibility of oceans containing abundant dolphins but greatly reduced shark populations lies outside the experience of both species and beyond the historical memory preserved within marine ecosystems. The consequences extend far beyond the relationship between these two remarkable animals. Sharks function as keystone predators whose presence influences the behavior and abundance of middle-ranking predators throughout the food web. When shark numbers fall, those smaller predators often increase unchecked, placing greater pressure upon the fish and invertebrates they consume. As these lower levels decline, coral reefs, seagrass meadows, and other interconnected habitats begin to weaken. Scientists have documented these cascading changes in regions where shark removal has been especially severe, revealing effects that unfold gradually across years and may require decades to reverse. The long story of dolphins and sharks has always been one of balance rather than victory. Intelligence answered instinct, cooperation answered solitude, and each shaped the evolution of the other across immense spans of time. Now a different influence is rewriting that relationship from outside. No living species carries inherited experience of a dolphin-rich ocean with sharks largely missing, because throughout recorded history, and through every one of the 35 million years before it, the sharks were part of the enduring pattern that held the sea together. Long before the modern ocean took its present form, evolution began exploring different answers to the same enduring challenge. Survival could be pursued through sharper senses, greater strength, and more efficient movement, or through memory, cooperation, and the ability to transform many individuals into something larger than any one of them alone. Across immense spans of time, sharks and dolphins came to embody these contrasting paths, each representing a remarkably successful solution shaped by countless generations of natural selection. The shark placed its evolutionary investment almost entirely within the individual. Every refinement served the hunter itself. Its body became an elegant expression of hydrodynamic efficiency, allowing swift movement through water with minimal wasted energy. Its senses grew extraordinarily precise, capable of detecting faint electrical fields, subtle vibrations, distant scents, and movements carried through the sea. Physical power, rapid reactions, and reliable instinct combined to produce one of the most effective solitary predators the planet has ever known. This strategy proved astonishingly durable, sustaining shark lineages across roughly 450 million years, while continents drifted, climates changed, and entire groups of animals appeared and vanished. The dolphin followed another path altogether. Rather than concentrating every advantage inside one individual, evolution devoted an enormous amount of energy to building an exceptionally costly brain. Such an organ demanded constant nourishment, yet it offered possibilities unavailable through muscle or instinct alone. Social bonds deepened, communication expanded in complexity, and knowledge became something that could exist beyond the experience of a single lifetime. Each individual contributed to a living network whose abilities depended not only upon the strengths of its members, but also upon the relationships connecting them. Both strategies achieved extraordinary success. Sharks remained among the dominant predators of marine ecosystems for hundreds of millions of years. Dolphins, arriving much later, experienced one of the most remarkable expansions of cognitive ability known among animals, reaching levels of encephalization exceeded only by humans. Neither path represented failure. Each flourished within the environments that shaped it, revealing that evolution does not pursue a single destination, but explores many workable solutions simultaneously. Yet when these two strategies encounter one another directly, an important difference gradually emerges. Individual refinement eventually approaches practical limits. Fins can become only so efficient, muscles only so strong, senses only so sensitive, before additional gains become increasingly difficult to achieve. The solitary hunter may continue performing with extraordinary consistency, but its capabilities remain bounded within a single body, carried only by that one animal throughout its life. Collective intelligence follows another pattern. A lone dolphin possesses impressive abilities, yet a pod becomes something qualitatively different from the simple addition of separate individuals. Every member contributes fresh streams of acoustic information gathered through echolocation. Every exchange of calls enlarges the group's shared awareness. Defensive positions multiply, coordinated movements become increasingly sophisticated, and experience accumulated by older animals remains available to younger generations through observation and learning. The system itself becomes richer as participation grows, creating possibilities unavailable to isolated individuals regardless of their physical excellence. This distinction deepens with the passing of generations. Adding more sharks to the same stretch of ocean does not merge their knowledge into a single greater intelligence. Each continues hunting according to its own experience and inherited behavioral patterns. Their presence may influence one another indirectly, but their minds remain separate, and their discoveries disappear when each life ends. A dolphin community develops differently. Every successful strategy, preserved through cultural learning, enlarges the shared inheritance available to future generations. The accumulated understanding of predator behavior, coordinated defense, communication, and cooperation becomes increasingly refined without requiring each newborn dolphin to rediscover those lessons independently. Over millions of years, the advantage expands because the network itself continues growing in depth. Evolution, in this remarkable comparison, reveals two successful wagers upon survival, yet only one possesses a structure that allows wisdom itself to accumulate across time, becoming stronger with every generation that remembers. Lift your attention above the surface of the sea, and the relationship between dolphins and sharks begins to resemble something far broader than a single contest between two remarkable animals. It becomes part of a recurring pattern woven through the history of life itself, one that appears whenever collective intelligence encounters extraordinary individual specialization. The ocean offers one expression of that pattern, but it is far from the only place where evolution has explored this idea. Across many environments, solitary predators have reached astonishing levels of refinement. Their bodies become precisely suited to their way of life, their senses sharpen through countless generations, and their movements approach remarkable efficiency. Yet whenever highly social animals remain in direct competition with such predators across immense stretches of evolutionary time, the relationship gradually changes. Wolves pursuing organized herds encounter coordinated vigilance instead of isolated prey. Large solitary cats, confronting social primates, meet communication, cooperation, and shared warning rather than individual surprise. Early human communities eventually altered their relationships with enormous Ice Age animals through planning, cooperation, and knowledge accumulated across generations. The details differ, but the deeper structure remains strikingly familiar. The reason lies in the different limits governing each strategy. Individual excellence can continue improving only until the architecture of the body approaches its practical boundaries. Muscles become stronger, senses more acute, reactions faster, yet every improvement grows smaller as physical possibilities are gradually exhausted. A single organism, no matter how refined, remains constrained by the capabilities contained within its own nervous system and by the experience gathered during one lifetime. Collective intelligence follows another trajectory altogether. When information flows between many individuals, every participant expands the capability of the whole. Discoveries no longer vanish with death if they can be communicated, remembered, and practiced by others. Successful behaviors accumulate rather than repeatedly beginning from the same starting point. Each generation inherits not only genes, but also a growing library of experience shaped by those that came before. Unlike muscle or bone, that shared knowledge possesses no obvious biological ceiling. It can continue expanding wherever communication, learning, and stable social relationships allow it to persist. From an evolutionary perspective, this represents a profound transition. Once a lineage develops enough social complexity to sustain reliable cultural transmission, competition no longer depends solely upon the qualities of individuals. Increasingly, success reflects how effectively information is gathered, preserved, distributed, and refined throughout the community. Natural selection continues acting upon bodies and brains. Yet another layer emerges above them, one built from memory, shared across many lives, rather than contained within only one. Dolphins crossed that threshold roughly 35 million years ago as their societies became increasingly sophisticated. Communication deepened, learning spread through pods, and survival strategies accumulated instead of disappearing. Sharks, despite inhabiting the oceans for roughly 450 million years, followed another path entirely. Their evolutionary achievements remain extraordinary, but they never entered this different competitive domain because their solitary lives offered no comparable system through which knowledge could compound across generations. This difference should never be mistaken for a judgment against sharks. Their design approaches remarkable effectiveness throughout nearly every ecological circumstance they encounter. Countless marine animals possess no meaningful defense against their speed, senses, or precision. The shark remains among evolution's greatest individual predators, a living demonstration of what hundreds of millions of years of refinement can accomplish. The dolphin simply illuminates where that strategy reaches its natural boundary. Beyond a certain point, no further increase in individual excellence can fully match the multiplying advantages created by organized cooperation, shared learning, and accumulated experience. In that sense, the relationship between dolphins and sharks becomes more than a story about the ocean. It reveals one of evolution's deepest recurring themes, that information carried together can eventually accomplish what even the most magnificent individual cannot achieve alone. After following the evidence through anatomy, behavior, learning, and evolution, one final boundary comes into view. Science can describe what a dolphin does with increasing precision, tracing the activity of neurons, measuring communication, and documenting coordinated responses to danger. Yet beyond all of those observations lies another question, one that biology can approach but never completely enter. It is the experience within the animal itself, the unseen world accompanying every decision, every sound, and every movement. The physical foundations for rich mental experience are certainly present. Dolphins possess a remarkably large cerebral cortex, intricate networks of folded brain tissue, and specialized spindle neurons associated in humans with self-awareness, empathy, and the rapid evaluation of complex social situations. Researchers have also gathered compelling evidence that dolphins possess theory of mind, the capacity to model what another individual knows, intends, or perceives. Such abilities allow relationships to become far more than simple instinctive reactions. They create the possibility of minds continuously interpreting the intentions of companions as well as the behavior of rivals. Another remarkable observation strengthens this picture. Dolphins consistently pass the mirror self-recognition test, one of the most widely accepted behavioral examinations of self-awareness. Presented with their own reflection, they do not behave as though another dolphin has appeared before them. Instead, they investigate markings on their own bodies, using the mirror as a tool for examining themselves. Only a small collection of animals has demonstrated this ability, including humans, great apes, and elephants. The result suggests that the dolphin possesses an internal sense of self extending beyond immediate sensation. Their responses to companions in distress add another layer. Researchers have documented changes in heart rate, shifts in vocal behavior, and deliberate physical approaches when dolphins encounter injured or struggling members of their own pod. These reactions often occur even when the observing individual faces no immediate danger. Such patterns resemble what scientists describe as empathic responses, indicating nervous systems capable of representing another individual's condition rather than reacting only to direct personal risk. These discoveries naturally invite the imagination toward experiences that remain impossible to measure directly. A dolphin does not merely receive sound. It creates pulses that travel through the surrounding water, encounters echoes returning from every surface, and transforms those returning reflections into an extraordinarily detailed representation of the surrounding world. Human technology offers a faint comparison through medical ultrasound, yet no instrument can reveal what that sensory universe actually feels like from within the mind that experiences it. The acoustic landscape may possess qualities for which human language has no equivalent because our own senses never evolved to perceive the world in that manner. The same mystery surrounds moments of coordinated defense. Long before a shark comes within visual range, echoes may already reveal its movement, its direction, and perhaps even subtle changes in posture. Information flows rapidly through the pod by means of sounds whose meaning remains only partly understood. Positions shift with remarkable precision. Adults place themselves where experience has taught them to stand. Younger animals respond almost immediately. Every movement appears coordinated, yet the lived awareness accompanying those actions remains hidden behind the limits of observation. Here science reaches one of its most meaningful frontiers. The evidence strongly indicates that dolphins possess minds capable of sophisticated perception, enduring relationships, emotional complexity, and rich internal processing. Their neural architecture supports experiences far beyond simple reflex. Their behavior consistently reflects capacities associated with awareness and understanding. Yet no experiment can cross the final distance, separating observation from subjective life. The dolphin continues to reveal its remarkable abilities through every generation of careful research. Even so, the inner character of those moments, the felt reality of perceiving an approaching shark through sound, recognizing companions beside it, and acting together within an invisible landscape of echoes, remains known only to the dolphin itself, preserved within a consciousness that science can illuminate from the outside, but never completely enter. The thought lingers long after the biology has been examined. If a mind as sophisticated as a dolphin's moves through the sea every day, then the ocean itself becomes something different. It is no longer merely an immense expanse of water inhabited by remarkable creatures. It becomes a place where countless forms of perception overlap, where realities exist side by side, each shaped by senses unlike our own, and each revealing a different version of the same world. The scale of that world is almost impossible to hold in a single image. The ocean covers roughly 71% of the Earth's surface and contains about 95% of the Earth's living space by volume. By almost any measure, the greater part of the planet's biosphere lies beneath the waves rather than above them. Forests, deserts, mountains, and plains occupy only a comparatively thin layer at the top of a world whose greatest dimensions extend downward into water that remains only partly understood. Despite centuries of exploration, much of this realm still lies beyond direct human observation. Less than 1/5 of the ocean floor has been carefully explored, and the vast columns of water rising above those depths remain even less familiar. Most journeys through the sea reveal only brief passages across its surface, leaving the overwhelming majority of its living volume beyond ordinary experience. In practical terms, it remains an environment as unfamiliar as any distant world imagined beyond our planet, surrounding us while remaining largely unseen. Within that immense domain move animals whose senses unfold along pathways almost entirely unavailable to human perception. Dolphins send streams of sound through darkness where vision offers little guidance. Returning echoes carry information about distance, shape, texture, density, and movement, forming a continuously changing picture that accompanies every moment of travel. At the same time, those same animals exchange vocal signals whose regional variations resemble dialects passed through generations. Young dolphins inherit not only genes, but also traditions, vocal patterns, hunting customs, and shared knowledge accumulated over many lifetimes. The richness of that acoustic world exceeds anything humans can presently construct in real time. A dolphin continuously builds a complete three-dimensional representation of its surroundings through sound while navigating, maintaining awareness of companions, monitoring potential threats, and interpreting the hidden structure of objects beyond ordinary sight. Even sophisticated human instruments usually separate these tasks into different machines, each designed for a single purpose. The dolphin performs them together as part of ordinary existence, without interruption, while remaining fully engaged with the social lives unfolding around it. No human mind possesses a natural framework for imagining what such perception is actually like. We can translate echoes into diagrams, display sonar images upon screens, and describe frequencies with mathematical precision, yet none of those achievements crosses the distance between measurement and experience. The dolphin inhabits a sensory universe whose textures, relationships, and meanings remain inaccessible to every observer standing outside that awareness. Science steadily expands the outline of that hidden landscape, while its inner character continues to rest beyond direct understanding. Seen from this broader perspective, the ocean becomes far more than a reservoir of water supporting countless species. It is an immense information environment, alive with minds gathering, interpreting, storing, and sharing knowledge through sensory channels that differ profoundly from our own. Every current carries signals. Every migration follows memories, extending across generations. Every encounter unfolds within invisible streams of information, passing between living creatures. The sea remains mysterious not because it is empty or unknowable, but because so much of its deepest reality exists inside forms of perception that evolved beneath the waves, revealing a living world whose true character can only be glimpsed from the outside. For almost 500 million years, the shark has traveled through oceans that never remained the same for very long. Long before the first forests spread across the continents, long before vertebrate animals walked upon land, and long before the Atlantic Ocean assumed the form we recognize today, sharks were already present. Their lineage reaches back approximately 450 million years, preserving a body plan so effective that countless generations have carried its essential design forward with remarkably little alteration. Across that immense span of time, the planet transformed again and again. Continents drifted across the globe, mountain ranges rose and wore away, coastlines disappeared beneath advancing seas, and new oceans opened where older ones had closed. The chemistry of seawater shifted through ages of warming and cooling, while entire communities of marine life appeared, flourished, and vanished. Through each transformation, the shark endured, refining an evolutionary strategy that depended upon extraordinary sensory precision, efficient movement, and responses shaped by countless encounters with the living world around it. Its resilience is written into the deepest chapters of Earth's history. Sharks survived all 5 major mass extinctions recognized by paleontologists. Among them was the catastrophe, approximately 252 million years ago, when nearly 96% of marine species disappeared during the greatest biological collapse known from the history of complex life. Later came the asteroid impact, approximately 66 million years ago, that ended the reign of the non-avian dinosaurs and reshaped ecosystems across land and sea. The shark persisted through both events, continuing into each new world with its ancient blueprint still recognizable. Against that immense timeline stands another lineage whose story is measured not in hundreds of millions of years, but in roughly 35 million. Compared with the shark, the dolphin is a remarkably recent arrival. Yet during that comparatively brief interval, something unexpected emerged. Without surpassing the shark in raw physical strength or replacing it as the universal ruler of the sea, the dolphin introduced an entirely different form of competitive pressure, one rooted not in sharper teeth or faster swimming, but in shared knowledge carried through living communities. The consequence reaches beyond isolated encounters. In places where both animals meet regularly, researchers have documented changes in shark behavior that would have seemed improbable without careful observation. Sharks may abandon favored hunting grounds, alter the timing of their movements, or leave areas altogether after sustained encounters with highly organized dolphin groups or their larger relatives among the toothed whales. The ancient predator remains formidable, yet its decisions increasingly reflect the presence of an opponent, unlike those that shaped its earlier evolution. That contrast deserves careful reflection. The dolphin did not overcome the shark by becoming more heavily armored, more heavily muscled, or more heavily armed. Instead, it developed the ability to gather information before danger arrived, distribute that information throughout a social group, preserve successful strategies across generations, and coordinate many individuals into a single adaptive system. Each dolphin contributes to something larger than itself, allowing experience to accumulate rather than disappear with every passing lifetime. Nothing in the shark's evolutionary history appears to have required an answer to that particular challenge. Its nervous system excels at interpreting immediate signals from the surrounding sea and translating them into rapid, dependable action. Those responses remain extraordinarily successful across almost every ecological circumstance the shark encounters. Yet, collective intelligence follows rules that individual refinement alone cannot anticipate. When faced with an adversary whose greatest strength exists between individuals rather than within any single one, caution becomes a sensible response. Perhaps that is the most enduring thought carried from this long journey through the ocean. After surviving catastrophes that reshaped the planet itself, an animal whose ancestry stretches across 450 million years now adjusts its movements in the presence of a newcomer whose greatest innovation is not greater force, but the remarkable ability to think together. For many people, the image of danger beneath the waves has always worn the same shape. It is the outline of a shark emerging from deep water, guided by extraordinary senses and powered by effortless motion. Generations of stories have turned that image into the symbol of the ocean's greatest threat. The reputation was not invented without reason. Sharks are genuinely formidable animals, among the most refined predators that evolution has ever produced, equipped with abilities that have carried their lineage across almost 450 million years of Earth's history. Yet the longer this journey has unfolded, the more another conclusion has slowly emerged. The greatest source of influence in the ocean is not always the strongest jaw or the swiftest body. Sometimes it is the ability to gather information, preserve it, and share it. That ability changes encounters before they begin. It reshapes decisions long before physical contact becomes necessary. It alters the behavior of predators that once seemed beyond challenge. The dolphin illustrates that principle with remarkable clarity. Its victories do not arise from heavier muscles or more powerful teeth. They begin with awareness. Long before a shark closes the distance, echoes returning through the water reveal movement, direction, and form. Those echoes become knowledge about an approaching hunter. That knowledge does not remain inside a single animal. It spreads through the pod, allowing many individuals to respond as parts of one coordinated system rather than as isolated creatures reacting alone. Each member contributes to something larger than itself. Some maintain awareness of the predator's changing position. Others adjust spacing to strengthen the formation. Experienced adults carry patterns learned through countless previous encounters, while younger dolphins inherit those successful responses through observation and participation. Across generations, practical knowledge accumulates instead of disappearing. Every successful escape, every effective defensive movement, and every reliable tactic becomes another layer added to a living tradition that continues long after the individuals who first discovered it are gone. Within that framework, physical techniques become expressions of information rather than raw force. A dolphin knows where to position itself because earlier generations learned which approaches reduced danger. It understands where the vulnerable moments of a shark exist because repeated encounters revealed predictable responses. Coordinated movements emerge because every participant contributes to a shared understanding unfolding in real time. What appears from the outside as perfect timing is, beneath the surface, the result of many minds continuously exchanging knowledge. In that sense, information becomes more consequential than any individual weapon. Teeth can wound only when they reach their target. Knowledge shapes events before the first movement begins. A predator that realizes it has already been detected loses much of the advantage that surprise once provided. A hunting strategy repeated across millions of years becomes less effective when another species has spent tens of millions of years studying every predictable pattern within it. The contest shifts from strength alone toward understanding, anticipation, and cooperation. The shark responds in the only manner available to the remarkable nervous system it possesses. It does not reflect upon history or discuss experience with companions. Instead, countless generations of successful and unsuccessful encounters have gradually shaped behavioral tendencies that favor survival. When a great white shark detects an organized pod of dolphins and changes direction, that decision reflects an ancient biological record written through repeated contact with an adversary, unlike any other encountered across its earlier evolution. Perhaps this is the deepest lesson carried by the sea. The most influential force within an ecosystem is not always the sharpest tooth or the fastest pursuit. Over immense spans of time, the power that most thoroughly reshapes the living world is the connected mind, carrying knowledge from one individual to another, from one generation to the next, until information itself becomes the strongest current moving through the ocean. A single change in direction can contain the weight of millions of years. From the surface, the moment appears almost ordinary. A shark approaches, senses something ahead, and then alters its course before disappearing into deeper water. Nothing dramatic unfolds, no struggle follows. Yet, within that brief decision lies an extraordinary record of evolutionary history, compressed into a movement lasting only moments. The choice to withdraw reveals that the shark possesses a remarkably refined system for assessing danger. Throughout its long history, that system has allowed it to distinguish promising opportunities from unacceptable risks with astonishing reliability. Every successful judgment increased the likelihood of survival, while every costly mistake removed another lineage from the future. Across immense stretches of time, natural selection preserved responses that favored continued existence. A shark that recognized circumstances carrying unusually high danger left more descendants than one that ignored the warning signs before it. Among those warning signs, an organized group of dolphins occupies a distinctive place. The response is not directed toward every movement in the sea or every large animal passing nearby. It emerges under particular conditions that have repeatedly proven significant over countless generations. The pattern suggests that encounters with highly coordinated dolphins and even more formidable relatives among the toothed whales have imposed consistent evolutionary pressure strong enough to shape the behavior of sharks across populations rather than through isolated experience alone. That observation carries an implication extending beyond the behavior of either animal. It suggests that a particular form of intelligence has become a genuine evolutionary force, not intelligence expressed through solitary invention, but intelligence distributed across social groups, preserved through culture, strengthened through communication, and expanded as each generation inherits the discoveries of those before it. Such a system does more than solve immediate problems. It gradually changes the environment experienced by every species sharing the same waters. The shark itself has remained remarkably stable through tens of millions of years. Its body plan, sensory systems, and methods of hunting have required comparatively little alteration because they already perform with extraordinary effectiveness. Yet, even this enduring design adjusts its behavior when confronted by an opponent operating according to principles outside the familiar pattern of predator and prey. Information shared across many individuals produces consequences that no single dolphin could create alone, and those consequences ripple outward through evolutionary time. In that sense, the shark's retreat becomes evidence for something larger than avoidance. It demonstrates that collective knowledge can influence the future of another species. The pressure created by coordinated minds has become strong enough to leave traces not merely in memories carried by individuals, but in behavioral tendencies repeated generation after generation. Evolution itself has begun responding to intelligence, as though intelligence were another force of nature, as real as changing climates or shifting coastlines. Seen from this perspective, the ocean becomes even more mysterious than its immense physical scale already suggests. Humans have explored only a small fraction of the seafloor, while the living volume above it remains even less familiar. Within that vastness exist communities exchanging information through signals we cannot naturally perceive, preserving traditions whose full complexity we have only recently begun to recognize, and adapting to one another through relationships still only partly understood by science. Perhaps the lasting significance of the shark turning away is not simply that one predator avoids another encounter. It is that the movement reveals an invisible history unfolding beneath the waves, written not only in bodies and fossils, but also in memory, communication, and shared experience. If such intricate exchanges have already transformed one of the oldest surviving lineages on Earth, then the unseen ocean almost certainly contains many more stories waiting beyond the reach of our present understanding, unfolding every day beneath waters that still guard most of their deepest secrets. Across the span of deep time, some relationships become so enduring that they resemble an exchange rather than a contest. The meeting between dolphins and sharks belongs to that rare category. On one level, it can be described through the language of evolutionary biology: predator pressure, survival, reproduction, and natural selection. Those explanations remain essential, yet they capture only part of what has unfolded beneath the waves. Seen from farther away, the relationship resembles an ancient conversation, one carried not through words but through bodies, behavior, memory, and countless generations shaped by one another. Every encounter has contributed another sentence to that ongoing exchange. A shark, refining the timing of its approach, altered the lives of dolphins that escaped. Those survivors carried forward traits that favored cooperation, awareness, and increasingly sophisticated communication. Their descendants inherited not merely stronger bodies, but richer systems for sharing information. In turn, sharks confronted prey that no longer behaved as isolated individuals. The conversation continued, each lineage gradually influencing the future of the other without intention, yet with remarkable consistency. If the co-evolutionary hypothesis reflects what truly happened across approximately 35 million years, then the dolphin carries the history of the shark within its own remarkable mind. Persistent predation rewarded tighter social bonds. Stronger social bonds favored richer communication. Richer communication supported larger and more capable brains. Those larger brains then expanded the possibilities for cooperation even further, creating a cycle that repeated across immense stretches of evolutionary time. The intelligence that now distinguishes dolphins may owe part of its existence to the relentless pressure once imposed by one of the ocean's oldest hunters. That inheritance extends beyond anatomy. Every generation receives patterns of behavior refined long before its birth. Young dolphins enter communities where protective responses, coordinated movement, and shared acoustic awareness already exist. Knowledge accumulated across lifetimes becomes part of the social fabric surrounding every newborn. Culture joins biology, allowing lessons to endure without waiting for genetic change alone. In this way, each pod becomes a living archive, preserving information earned through countless encounters with danger. The shark also bears the imprint of this relationship. Its remarkable sensory systems continue serving it across nearly every corner of the sea. Yet, among the signals entering those senses are patterns that now encourage restraint. The appearance of coordinated dolphins, and even more strongly their largest relatives, can trigger avoidance behaviors observed even in individuals lacking personal experience with such encounters. That consistency suggests the accumulated influence of evolutionary history, preserving caution because caution repeatedly favored survival. The shark carries its own chapter of the conversation, written not in language but in deeply rooted patterns of response. These two lineages have therefore been interpreting one another for far longer than humanity has existed. Their exchange began before our earliest ancestors appeared, before familiar civilizations, before the landscapes many people consider ancient had taken their present forms. Throughout changing climates, drifting continents, and shifting coastlines, The conversation endured beneath the surface, continuing whether or not any observer existed to notice it. Much of what passes between them remains beyond direct human understanding. Their exchanges unfold through sound beyond ordinary hearing, subtle movements within the water, collective decisions unfolding almost instantly, and sensory worlds fundamentally different from our own. Science gradually uncovers fragments of that hidden dialogue, yet the greater portion still lies outside our perception. Even so, one image remains unmistakable. A shark changes direction. A pod of dolphins continues together, each individual contributing to a shared awareness extending beyond any single mind. Within that simple scene rests the accumulated memory of approximately 35 million years, carried forward without pause, enriching an ancient conversation that the ocean continues to preserve with every passing generation. The water closes behind the departing shark until no trace of its passage remains. Currents drift through the space where moments before two ancient lineages shared another meeting in a relationship older than humanity can truly comprehend. Nothing announces that the encounter has ended. The sea simply resumes its endless motion, carrying away the last disturbance while preserving its consequences in ways no eye can observe. Within the pod, the formation settles into its familiar shape once again. The youngest dolphins return toward the protected center, surrounded by older companions whose positions shift with practiced ease. Across the group, streams of echolocation continue flowing outward in every direction. Clicks spread through the surrounding water, returning as countless echoes that together create an ever-changing three-dimensional picture of the world. The shark is no longer present. Its absence becomes part of that acoustic landscape just as surely as its presence had been only moments before. Yet the encounter does not disappear when the danger has passed. Information moves through the pod in forms humans have only begun to understand. Signature whistles identify individuals. Rapid burst pulse sounds accompany moments of close coordination. Pressure waves travel through water with remarkable efficiency, carrying details beyond ordinary human perception. Somewhere within those exchanges is a record of what has just unfolded, where the shark approached, how it altered its course, when the group tightened its formation, and when the ancient hunter finally withdrew. That knowledge does not belong to any single dolphin. It becomes part of the shared inheritance of the community itself. The calves drifting safely near the center experience more than protection. They are surrounded by companions whose responses embody countless earlier encounters. Every coordinated movement, every adjustment in spacing, every exchanged signal contributes another layer to an archive maintained not on stone or paper, but within living relationships. As those young dolphins mature, they will carry fragments of this accumulated understanding into future years, adding their own experiences before passing them onward through behavior and companionship. In this way, each generation inherits more than genes. It receives an expanding reservoir of practical knowledge refined across approximately 35 million years. Evolution provided the remarkable brain capable of supporting such complexity, while culture filled that remarkable structure with lessons gathered across uncounted lifetimes. Biology established the foundation. Shared experience continued building upon it without interruption. Far beyond this pod, the shark continues its own journey through waters its ancestors occupied for approximately 450 million years. Its lineage endured changes that reshaped nearly every other branch of complex life. It survived the greatest extinction the oceans have ever known. It remained through shifting continents, changing seas, and vanished worlds. Yet today it altered its course, because another kind of power entered the ocean comparatively recently, not overwhelming strength, but coordinated intelligence expressed through communication, memory, and enduring social bonds. The shark has not become lesser, nor has its ancient design failed. Its extraordinary abilities remain among the finest examples of evolutionary refinement ever produced. What changed was the environment surrounding those abilities. Across immense spans of time, the sea welcomed a warm-blooded, air-breathing, sound-producing, pod-living animal whose greatest adaptation was never found in its teeth or speed, but in its capacity to transform many individuals into something functioning almost as one mind. The pod moves onward without haste, disappearing into greater depth where darkness and distance merge beyond ordinary sight. Around them, echoes continue unfolding through the water, carrying fresh observations into an ancient network of shared understanding. Behind them swims a shark that will seek another path before the night has ended. Ahead of them travels a living tradition that has already remembered this meeting, adding one more chapter to the oldest conversation the ocean has continued to preserve across the immeasurable passage of time.